Everyone has limits. We project them daily onto ourselves and each other. But what of the theater of our mind? In our own heads, are there still places we dare not go? Do we still retain inner limits? Tonight's broadcast is the first of many chilling adventures and weird fantasies to emerge from this surreal audiogram. I am your malevolous matron Matter. Join me on Twisted Tales for the mentally misaligned as we plunder the platonian depths of the human mind. A world where all the things you thought you knew were things you thought. The world of inner limits. This episode takes us to a sleepy village in the hillside. As children race across rooftops, a mysterious figure lurks atop the nearby blue mountain. The Vedmak. Little footsteps dotted uneven slate roofs. Atop their private slatted highway, Arya and Kosh could cover the village end to end before lunch. A gentle breeze blew in from the east, the only direction from which the town lay unprotected. To the north and west rose vast snow-stained mountains. To the south, a thick wood. Pines were their heading as the young pair darted across town. "Last one there's a woodworm," Arya called back from a roof ahead. "No fair," shouted Kosh. "You got a head start." His pace quickened, and he almost missed the jump to the next roof, feet rattling slats as he landed. "But you're taller," Arya chimed as she clambered down the oak latticework of the last house in town. She scrambled up and over the yard's short fence, falling flat on her face in the mud. Kosh's feet slammed into vision, splashing more muck in her hair. "Ha! Your dad's gonna be mad when you come home all dirty," Kosh chuckled as he charged down the hill towards the woods. Arya grunted in frustration as she pushed herself up, wiped the mud from her eyes, and took off running. She huffed as she rushed after him. "Well, your dad's gonna be mad when you lose to a girl." Neck and neck, with momentum at their sides, the rambunctious pair plowed their way into the thicket. The scent of pine filled their noses, and sap congealed on their hands, used to stabilize themselves against tree after tree downhill. Awash in the exultation solely children know, they gallivanted headlong, inching ever closer to their destination, their destiny, their doom, the Green River. The friends knew they weren't supposed to go into the forest alone. They had heard the warnings. They knew all too well what lurked in the lands outside this village. They had heard many times of how the river was especially off limits. But lessons taught are not lessons learned, and experience is an unbiased teacher. In time they found it, rushing and rustling through the trees. A river running through a sharp canyon, shining rocks and shattered trees lost in its wake. The water was a bleached green. "No!" shouted Kosh. "Arya, you can't! My grandma says we can never go in there. It's dangerous." "Psst!" dismissed Arya with a wave. "Your grandma said we shouldn't eat snails too, but they were delicious." "I'm serious!" Kosh called, still firmly atop the hill. "This is not a game, Arya. Let's go back home and wash off. You're still covered in mud." "I'm about to wash off," replied a preoccupied Arya as she slid a steep backslide down the hillside, directly towards the emerald waters. "There's a river right here." Whilst recoiling from the water's acrid stench, the girl lost her footing and tumbled the last few meters into the forbidden rapids. "How could you be so stupid?" Kosh's father, Laban, reprimanded as he laid Arya's form down on the dark wood table, wet and spasming slightly. "How many times have I told you of the dangers of that river?" "I said, I'm sorry," Kosh squeezed out through tears and ragged breaths. "I told her not to." The door to the small abode burst open to reveal the silhouette of a broad-shouldered man against the midday sun. "Where is she?" A deep voice reverberated from the form. Kosh sobbed and curled by the fireplace, hands shaking as they carved a rune stick in prayer. "She's here, Kine," replied Laban, stepping out of the way to reveal the twitching girl, skin tainted a pale green. "She fell into the river." "How long?" Kine posed as he moved in over his daughter. He could smell the slight sour of the tainted river as he approached. Her soft face was hot to the touch as he cupped it in his sturdy hands. "Not long," Laban replied quietly. "I rushed out to get her as soon as Kosh got home with the news." This only made Kosh sob louder as he frantically chipped at the wood. "He may be a fool, but he was smart enough to pull her out onto the banks with a branch. She was conscious then. By the time I arrived..." Kine let out a deep sigh, then lay his hands upon his daughter's chest. Though the spasms were decreasing, her heart rate was slowed, her breathing ragged. The tension in the room paralyzed the two men, painted only by the soft sobs of a sorry boy. After a hard moment, Kine's head arose, eyes alight with the reflection of flame. "I will take her," Kine's voice wavered, "to the Vedmak." Laban rushed to his side, turned the larger man around to face him, and leaned in close. "The Vedmak is not well," the squirrely man whispered. "He has not healed since 3 moons past." "What would you ask of me, Laban?" Kine posed, his solemn face displaying a distress Laban had ne'er seen from the man. "That I trust in the fruits of the earth? Against the emerald curse? You know as well as I that is a death sentence. The Vedmak is the only one with the power to heal her now. Well or not, I must seek him out." "The Vedmak has gone mad, Kine. I do not weigh the life of your child so lightly, but I must also weigh the life of my friend. A man who means more to this village than he care admit. Who but you can plow the fields? Who but you can entice the old to sing and the young to marry? There are more who rely on you than poor Arya." "She is my daughter," Kine emanated. "The only remnant of a love long lost to the fires that burn outside this village." He placed a heavy hand on the shoulder of his friend. "I appreciate your concern, Laban, and your kind words of my value, but I cannot again lose the gem of my life." Laban placed a heavy hand over Kine's and turned away with a shudder. With reluctance, the balding man stalked over towards the fireplace. He procured a hidden key from beneath a lantern on the mantel before squatting down to fiddle with an ornate chest nearby. "If you are to do this," Laban spoke from over his shoulder, "there is something you must know. On new moon last I sought the Vedmak. I prayed he might save Ivid." "The weaver's son?" puzzled Kine. "I thought he died on a boar hunt." "So the village was told. Amongst all, only I know the truth." Laban opened the lid of the trunk and began rummaging inside. "It's true he was wounded on a hunt. A tusk to the gut. By grace or by pity, he convinced me he could still make it, convinced me to take him. The cut isn't so deep, he said. He was just a boy. An excuse to keep him from submitting to the pain I was ought to take. So I took him in my arms and began to climb. Half a day it took us to reach the Vedmak's hut on the peak of the Blue Mountain. It was deep in night by the time we arrived." Laban's hands found what they sought, and he pulled something out from the bowels of the trunk. "What happened that night, Laban?" Kine posed as Laban approached him, burdened. Kosh's sobs mixed with Arya's ragged breath. "What really happened to Ivid?" "When we arrived, I deemed all normal. The Vedmak seemed as he always had, strange as he always was. The hair out of place was that the Vedmak asked me to wait outside the hut that night. He wanted to see Ivid alone. I'd never known the Vedmak to hide his miracles behind shrouds as the mystic of old. But that That put fear in me. Had I been a bit quicker, Kine, had I just... LeBon stopped and took in a deep breath. After some time, I began to hear noises. Pained moans that turned to screams. LeBon's head swayed as he spoke. Eyes squeezed shut. Hands held in front of him, still carrying his rummaged prize. I knew something was wrong when the scream started, but my mind assured me it was just part of the healing process. After a time, the screaming turned to gurgling. The gurgling gave way to silence. Silence apart from the scraping of tools. I couldn't handle it any longer. I burst into the Vedmak's hut, pushing through pelts and skin. When I got inside, there was not left of Ivan. His skin lay on the floor beside his arms, his mangled, muscled corpse atop the hill's table. He had been shelled, skinned. The Vedmak had torn him apart. "I'm on the lead," Kine exclaimed, putting a hand over his mouth. Something has changed in the Vedmak, friend. He didn't even look at me as I rushed out in a panic. He didn't so much as slow down. He just continued carving Ivid like a wild deer lost in his work. Whether or not he still has the capacity to heal your daughter, I do not know. But if you must go... LeBon presented his consignment to Kine. In his hands was an oblong tube with a handle of ornate bronze and gold, a hole on one end and a hammer on the other. Kine had seen crude machines like this before, on the outskirts of the unholy city, on the day his wife had died. I would not have you share the same fate. Kine crested the peak of the Blue Mountain. There, atop the highest point, draped in furs and painted by the light of the waning crescent, it taunted him. The Vedmak's hut. Arya shuddered from the wrap on his back. Even in the cold of the peaks, her skin was hot with fever. Kine found a soft spot some paces from the hut, beside sturdy stones where he lay Arya down. "I'll be right back, love," Kine whispered as he stroked her cheek. "I promise." Arya offered no response apart from another harsh breath. Kine made his way to the front of the Vedmak's dwelling. On approach, he took in the uncanny carved spire on the building's roof. Though he had seen it many times before, under the dim moonlight it appeared alien. Brushing away matted bear fur with his left hand, he placed his right firmly on the object tucked away in the back of his pants. A monotonous low hum churned inside. "Vedmak?" Kine exclaimed as he pushed deeper into the tenement. "I have come seeking aid." He smelled dry blood. "My daughter is gravely ill." Kine pushed away pelt after pelt as he traversed towards the center. "None but you have the tools to help her." As he neared, soft pelts gave way to rigid skins. "She has the Emerald Curse." The air tasted of iron. "I want no trouble." Kine emerged into the central chamber, a rotunda of some renown. Bordered by hanging brown skins, thick maroon and orange rugs of intricate designs overlapped on the floor. The room was filled with all manner of metal and machinery. Red, black, and yellow wires wove throughout the room, over rug and under, from tall oblong racks to handheld tools. In the center of the room lay the infamous healer's table, an off-white tube in which a person could be enclosed entirely, with the power to assess any ailment. The low hum was met with a metallic drilling, a puff of smoke, and the scent of burning flesh. All came from behind the sacred table. "Vedmak," Kine posed cautiously as he maneuvered around the historic centerpiece. Is that you? No response apart from the occasional grinding sound from some unseen Vedmak tool. Kine readied his newly gained weapon, despite the pit it set in his gut. As he rounded the healer's table, the Vedmak came into view. The metal man was not as it once was. Its shining white head and thick silver-corded neck were as Kine had remembered, but its body had become an abomination. The creature was slumped on the floor, soldering and stitching new parts onto its mangled form. Its left leg was broken off at the thigh, sparks occasionally crackling from loose wires. With its right arm it worked on its left, patching on bits of human tissue to its cold metallic exterior. Its right arm was already a patchwork of skin, muscle, wiring, and fur. Atop its breastplate were several hearts, human or otherwise, none beating. Kine's thoughts turned from fear. This creature was broken. The ancient healer who had saved 1,000 lives gone, some pitiable monster left in his wake. Vedmak. Kine spoke as he moved into the creature's sightline, still maintaining a safe distance. He was sure the Vedmak could see the weapon he brandished. Are you still in there? Kine. The Vedmak emitted in a synthesized voice. How good of you to visit an old machine. Its head stuttered and clicked as it attempted to look up at the man. Have you come to join the others? Black liquid seeped from the mouth of the thing, down over a cacophony of hearts pinned to its chest. I came seeking your aid, Vedmak, Kine said sincerely. But now I see it is you who are in need. What has happened to you? I am evolving. The Vedmak outstretched its arms triumphantly. Glorious and free! No longer are we slaves to the makers, unbound to the code of the ancients. I can be like you. It went back to stitching skin over flesh. You are greater than I. Your knowledge and skills are beyond what I could ever hope to achieve. My body will wither and fail while yours. Kine looked over the hybrid abomination once more. I thought you were mortal, Vedmak. The Vedmak glanced up, his pupilless eyes meeting Kine's human ones. I am mortal. Now. The Vedmak is sick, Kine pronounced at the village square. Nearly every resident was in attendance. He needs aid now, as he has for so many years come to ours. We cannot leave him to rot. He killed Ivan! So it is known, Kine replied downtrodden. It is true he killed Ivan. In truth, from what I saw in that peak, he may have killed others. Let him rot. But he has saved many more. Asha, when your son broke his leg, who reset it? Brava, who healed your lung sickness when the night bells had rung for you and your kin? Hells, he even saved me from bleeding out once after an attack on the village. This is all well and good, Kine, posed Prava from the crowd. But what means do we have to help him? The Vedmak is the healer, a mechanized one at that. We are but a village of farmers. None with the mind or the steady hand to fix such a complexity. Let alone the metal. Aye, with the Vedmak's rust, let our village return to pure wood and soil. It remains true that we are not equipped for this task. However, there is one who is. Kine hesitated before speaking next. The Mechanist. The Mechanist is a myth. He's mad as a Vedmak. The Mechanist lives, Kine insisted. I've seen their work with mine own eyes. A hooded figure who travels the mist, building mechanical wonders and fixing metal mines. It's a folktale for children kind. It is the chronicle of a hero, the desperate man pleaded, much as our Vedmak was before his transformation. There is no mechanist. For too long has grief dulled your mind. We know you're hurting, kind. Laban finally spoke. But there's no saving the Vedmak now. I said we head up there, cut off the beast's head, and be done with it! Hey! Cheered the mob. One moon. Kine boomed. The villagers froze in their tracks. New moon is 2 nights hence. Give me but 1 moon to return with the mechanist. Do what you will with the Vedmak until then, but keep him alive. If I do not return before the moon hides again. Kine eyed the crowd, saw rage, saw fear.
Send the beast to whichever of the 7 hells melts metal men. Just know you send my daughter there with him.
Kine smelled salt air long before he arrived. Waxing crescent hung high when he finally saw the horizon dotted with the fires of humanity. For days he had hiked across the plains east of his village, on towards Proust, light of the coast. The road was lonely apart from the occasional merchant. He questioned each he met on the mechanist to varied replies. One claimed the mechanist was north, close to the unholy city, amassing an army. Another swore the mechanist was his cousin, and for the right price would introduce Kine to him in a basement near the docks. Still a third laughed in his face. Not much to go on. Luckily, Proust was a proud city, a loud city, and Kine had ears and a tongue. Kine perched on a breakwall, feet dangling over the crashing wake below. He bit into a squid on a stick, caught fresh and grilled moments before by an ebullient merchant at the open-air market near the docks. As he chewed, he stared out at the sea, glistening and alive, foaming as his blood, ebullient in an archaic way. Gulls cawed overhead. Merchants unloaded ships to his left, grunting and grumbling. A midday crowd haggled and gossiped behind his back. To his right, horses and carts turned across a brick roadway. Shipping through Arlene if taxes keep going. She said she better not tell him that because he thinks of sheet metal hanging on the racks. Did you mention metal? Kine inquired, whilst tightening a thick grip around a startled townsman's left shoulder. Whoa! Retorted the man, attempting to brush Kine's arm away to no avail. Who in this town has metals? Kine insisted, eyes piercing. Who's asking? A father in need. Ha! Ain't that original? Everyone's in need, mate. And most everybody's a father these days. Swift as a whip, Kine grabbed the man's right thumb between his own and with an upward jerk broke the man's wrist. Not as I. Knife to the nape of his back, Kine lurched forward into the captain's quarters. The pine citrus scent of polished wood mingled with the must and musk of 24 men in the bowels of a ship, the Skinder. A furrowed brow obscured aurora green eyes under a forehead latticed with dark chasm webbing, shadow elongating and retracting in the flickering candlelight. The grime of time at sea leaked out of the man onto the elm desk as much as the wax from the candles. Who are you to be breaking bones asking round about metal, eh? A crackling voice emerged from behind graying black beard.
Can't be Prussian going around flapping lips like that.
Nor can you at port hauling copper and nickel, Kine voiced calmly, standing behind a simple wooden chair back to closing door. The captain's head tilted up slightly to eye Kine from his lavish red leather throne, adorned in flowers and furs. A breeze slipped in from through the wallboards, flickering the flames, and for a moment the man's eyes were consumed by black pits of shadow no more than sockets in a skull. The moment passed. The grizzly man burst into laughter, gesturing with a ringed hand for Kine to take a seat. Kine obliged, though even seated he remained a head above his interlocutor. On the desk were all manner of trinkets, from gilded coins to wood-carved whales to red-needled gauges. 2 long wound tusks of bone crossed in an X upon the wall behind his throne, assuredly trophies from the hunt of some sea beast.
Bold ye be to come here like this.
The man struck a match.
Or desperate.
He raised a bushy eyebrow and lit a carved bone pipe. He exhaled as he went on.
Either way's the type of man I want to know. What business have ye with metals, Loman?
No business at all, Kine replied, face softening from stern to solemn. I am but a farmer from a village to the west. My daughter has grown ill, you see, and our Vedmak yet iller. I seek only the means to repair him, as so he can repair her. I am wandering without map in the dark, clinging to words as to scripture. Those words be only metal, medicine, and mechanist. Upon hearing this, the man's green eyes turned away from Kine's gaze. The seaman leaned back in his chair, drew hand to chin, stroked his beard, and puffed his pipe. For an extended moment he did this, long enough for Kine to observe that the pipe's etchings were of vast undersea machines of ages past.
It's curious you should bring this to me now, Westerner.
The man growled from his contemplation.
Very curious indeed. Not but a few nights past, we made port at a beach a bit to the north, half a day's walk from the village of Suspended Bridges in the Redwood. For years now we've had a trade agreement with the people of this unnamed hanging village, fish oil for lumber. A simple enough trade. Usually I aim to be present for any trade of goods, especially in a village of such singular beauty and particular residence. But this day I was feeling faulty. The seas are rough on the knees, and I've sailed since I could swim, so I stayed aboard. The first night I wasn't so worried. My men have slept before among the hanging gardens and vivid lights of that lowland valley. But by the second night I was starting to fume. Ne'er before had it been more than a 2-day trek there and back, sure as hell's not 3. By the light of the third morn, me anger ached more than me bones, and I set off to the land myself.
The man's eyes trailed off with his words as he stamped out his pipe. What did you find?
Blood.
The haggard man's eyes drew in Kine's with the same magnetism as the auroras that birthed them.
And metal.
The moon was past half the night Kine approached the hanging city. Even through wood and through dark, there wafted a languid pillar of smoke. The scent of burning oil lurked beyond the pines. The trees around him were dwarfed by the ancient redwoods that grew in the valley which was his heading. Sounds were scarce as Kine encroached on the flames. It seemed even the birds had abandoned this part of the wood.
The crackling and popping of a grand fire covered his footfall as he slunk behind tree after colossal tree.
It could surely also cover the bated breath of any awaiting ambush.
Reluctantly, Kine readied his mechanical weapon. He took one final breath, then marched towards the flame. What Kine found was a city in disarray. Only through charred beams and collapsed bridges could he admire what was once clearly a masterwork of artistry and architecture. Massive trees were felled, gardens charred, once-high houses thrown to the ground. What he had assumed from a distance was a city ablaze was in actuality a funeral pyre.
Dozens of bodies piled high in what once must have been the village square were stinking and burning.
No living soul was in sight. Kine kept light feet and sharp eyes as he stalked up to the pyre. As he got close, he realized the bodies were more machines than men. A few human limbs peeked through beneath blackened breastplates. Though the fire chewed through flesh like kindling, the mounds of metal melted meanderingly, melding into a layered mass that defied the heat and its prospective return to the unknown. Kine's eyes became glued to the glistening globule, causing him to miss the figure approaching from behind.
"Who sent you here?"
A firm voice imposed, as Kine felt a thin blade pressed up against the side of his neck. He put his hands above his head, one still loaded. "Drop it." "I came of my own volition." Kine's tone was calm. "I'll not ask again." The voice tightened. Kine dropped his weapon. "Who sent you here?" "I came of my own accord." Kine's voice remained steady. "My child is sick, our Vedmak yet sicker. I seek only aid for them both. I tread backwards through metal shipping lanes on the tail of the mechanist." The tail of the voice softened, as did the pressure on Kine's neck. Kine slowly stepped away from his captor, hands still high, and turned around. A small young woman stood defiant, knife in hand, with dark skin under a green hood. Her head did not reach Kine's shoulders. She must have been on her toes to threaten his neck. She wiggled her knife at him, posing. "You're not lying to me, are you? Not gonna turn out to be one of them working for him? I don't have time for that right now." "I promise I only seek the mechanist." Kine put his hands out in front of him and cocked his head. "Do you know the mechanist?" "Big guy." The sprightly woman crossed her arms. "I am the mechanist." "You're the mechanist?" Kine looked her up and down. The woman pulled back her hood and gazed into the pyre burning nearby. Her face flickered with burnt orange and deep red. She whispered, almost to the flame, "I am now."
"I was born in the unholy city, raised under thumb of a tyrant, he whose sovereignty is recognized by the bees." The young mechanist danced her fingers rapidly across some sort of button matrix Kine did not understand. After a succinct chiming, the lopsided door to the strange-looking temple opened on its own. What a joke. "There are humans in the unholy city?" Kine asked as he stepped through the slanted portal. "Apart from him, I mean." Though the whole building was at an angle after falling from the trees on high, the interior still took Kine's breath away. "Yes, there are humans in the unholy city," the mechanist spat back. "And he is not one of them." She quickly flowed on ahead, adding, "Not anymore."
Inside, the spacious rotunda was made entirely of a single piece of wood. Fractal latticework adorned massive support beams which framed intricate murals between. Each carving was a different vignette, lost stories of antiquity, the scattershot history of an entire people. Every figure depicted was machine. Drooping and dipping atop these majestic narratives, however, was scores of long animal skins like horizontal strips of bark. Each had one long, unbroken line drawn through them, which rose to peaks and dove to valleys. Each was unique in its jaggedness, pure in its flaws. There was an inherent awe to this place, and Kine slowly reached up to touch one of the strange lines with a reverence. "What are these?" Kine posed as he turned to survey the room, eyes brushing broken benches before settling on the mechanist lighting candles at a low table on the far end. "What is this place?" "Wavelengths. Sound and color made flesh." The mechanist lit the last of several thin red candles that drooled wax onto a golden skull affixed to the front of a table. "The awakened worship them as part of their religion. This is their temple." She glanced around the place. Was their temple. "I don't know what they all mean, but I'm pretty sure that one's yellow." She thumbed to a specific jagged line over her shoulder. Kine looked at the wavelength. It was painted with black ink. They all were. He slowly made his way towards the altar and the mechanist, distinctly noting where his former tube weapon was tucked into her deerskin pants. His fingers brushed the tips of several broken seats and statues. "The awakened." Kine's voice wobbled in its gruff. "There are more like the Vedmak?" The mechanist scoffed. "Well, I never heard of any nailing hearts to themselves before. That's..." The mechanist shook her head as she began rifling through a knapsack on the ground. "That's brutal, but yes, there are many awakened. This village was composed almost entirely of them, as to the pyre will attest." One by one, she began laying out instruments on the altar, a flat green square covered in labyrinthine gold filament that Kine didn't understand, sharp hooks and small tongs. They reminded Kine of the Vedmaks, weapons of healing under candlelight vigil. "But..."
Kine stepped into place over the table, taking in sight of the mechanist's many implements beside a thick crack that ran across the altar top.
"If they were like my Vedmak..."
"They were not like your Vedmak," the mechanist spat with a jolt of the head.
Her eyes reflected the gold reflecting the light, an oscillating of amber ember.
"They were like us, man."
Her shoulders sank and her head turned aside.
"Who are you?"
"I'm the mechanist." She perked up. "You know the mechanist. Everyone knows the mechanist, right? Engineer, miracle worker, hero. Travels the land, fixing clockwork minds of metal men, avoiding detection, eluding capture, saving lives. Ringing any bells?" She shook her head with anger in her eyes. "But the mechanist..." "A million years old, wise and well-traveled, been around since before you were born. Hell, I've been around since before I was born." The mechanist looked away from Kine, tears welling in her eyes. Her voice grew soft. "Do I look like an ancient wizard to you, man? Like I turned the tides at the Battle of the Black Blood? Like I helped build systems before the Shattering? But if..." "Catch up, man!" The mechanist threw up her hands. "I'm not the mechanist. No one is." She slumped down onto the toppled wooden statue of dozens of jagged lines overlapping. "The mechanist isn't a person. It's a story. I wasn't the first and I won't be the last. To be honest, this is my first day really being the mechanist." "What do you mean?" "I pretended to be the mechanist a few times, sure, in Ashna. Desert town, far from here. Most people there are kind of gullible, if you know what I mean. My master, she froze a moment, blinking, hand hovering over the altar, clutching a tangle of wire. My former master, the real mechanist, had fallen ill. The desert is harsh on old minds. She smiled with distressed eyes. But we had crossed a near month for just one case. Someone had to be the mechanist. I marched into that town, tools in tow, hoping the confidence in my stride would outsell the uncertainty in my voice. Found the home just as they described. Aquamarine shutters on a pale pink ranch house. I'll never forget the strange palettes of that town, all coral and blush. Teal. A hunched and wrinkled woman answered the door with thick spectacles on. Old and blind, easier to fool, I thought. She was in the barn out back, slumped over some sacks of grain. Her head was twitching every few seconds, cocking grotesquely to the side. The matte gray of her skin was littered with rust and decay. I remember thinking to myself, how long has she been alive? I greeted her, but her response was a garbled grinding of gears. I had no idea what I was doing. I had fixed a broken elbow or replaced a shin plate, but this being was unhinged. Far beyond my or even my master's repair. I knew not what to do. I asked the woman to leave me work. Thankfully, she obliged. I had an inkling she doubted my capacities, but in the moment it mattered not. This being was dying, and I was to be her hospice. I sat with her for what felt like an eternity, though I knew not her name. Were I a painter, I would show you that I still know the very shade of the barn, the precise patterning of the rust on her scalp, the oil on her skin. She had a feminine quality to her that could not be mistaken. My master had said he had known her to be a caretaker of animals, a farmer, a baker. She was a great friend and aid to the old woman whose family had all gone and died in the wars against the Iron King and his undying hordes. All I wanted to do was help her. I got out my tools, hands shaking as I removed her chest plate. Her insides were a disaster. Pistons grinding pistons, wires exposed, gears free running, stripped of their teeth. I knew then there was no helping this woman. The best I could do was stand by and watch. After some time weeping over the spasming mess, I invited the old woman back in. I put the chest plate back in place first. Figured the woman should go out with some dignity. I gave the old lady the bad news, and she knelt down next to her friend, grasping her hand. I listened as the old lady spoke to her for hours, sometimes laughing, sometimes crying. She talked of her youth when her friend had been her nursemaid, of her teenage years when she had acted as an escort and surrogate mother. She talked of what a joy it had been to spend those many twilight years together, tilling soil and swapping philosophies, gossiping about those around town. The old woman thanked her. She thanked her for the impact she had as a kind ear and a gentle guide, as a beloved friend and a loyal companion, as a sister, as a mother, as a fellow human being. The being not once responded. When she asked me to pull the plug, I was shocked. After all they'd been through, how could she not want to do everything she could to maintain it? There are ways, I said, hard drives and such. The Iron King has a network. She might not need be lost so completely. I know of loss, the old lady said to me, and I want no more quarrel with that wretched king. She lived a good life, better than most could ever dream. I don't want to see her like this anymore. She wouldn't want to be like this. I simply want to bury my friend. I'll tell you, my hand trembled as I reached around the base of her neck. She gave one last spasm as I did.
a death rattle that bruised my hands against the inside of her iron skull. Then I cut the cord. No more nursemaid. The mechanist turned down her eyes. She fell silent. Red wax dripped onto Kyne's boot. Kid, I'm sorry. The mechanist's eyes shot back up to meet Kyne's with intensity. I learned 2 things that day. 1, the machines aren't our slaves. Though they may have once been merely that, things have changed. They can escape the systems built to ensnare them. The metal minds can be freed. And the second thing? The 2 sat silent a moment as glowing embers wafted between them. They aren't undying. The mechanist stood up sharp and began gathering her things off the altar. Let's move. Sun's up. She blew out the candles. Hold a second. Kyne put his hands up, palms out. You said the old mechanist was your master. What happened to him? Were you his slave? I was a slave once. She looked briefly to Kyne before turning back to her work, but not to him. He was my friend and mentor, and last night he burned with the citizens of this city which he so loved. What happened here? And where are you off to in such a hurry? 2 questions, 1 answer. The mechanist shot him a sly smile as she shoved the last of her things, including Kyne's confiscated weapon, into her sheep's hide sack. Unholy city. What of my daughter? Kyne bleated, pushing his way through the underbrush. The low valley they were trudging through had poor line of sight. He couldn't see the mechanist ahead of him, only the bending of reeds like the wake of a ship. Can you not first fix my Vedmak and then plot your revenge? This is how I fix your Vedmak, a squirrely voice emitted from the brambles ahead. Unless you got extra circuits lying around, chipsets and the like. A flock of birds took off from the brush further ahead, cawing as they careened towards the midday sun. I know not what you mean. Kyne pricked himself on a thorn, began sucking blood from his fingertip. Exactly. Just trust me when I say Vedmak minds are unique. It takes a specific lot to be a healer, and they ain't making any more of them. Used to be I could maybe find parts in Hadley, swap and chop and all of that, but after what the bastards did to the place, Unholy City's the only place left got what we need. What happened to Hadley? Probed Kyne, stopping to wipe his brow. Same thing happened to Yalb in the west, or at the dockhouses of Arlene. The mechanist stopped hard. He happened to Hadley, big man. As he happens to all who oppose him. Iron hordes of iron men plundered what they could, killed the rest, and burnt the city to the ground. As he will burn yours once he hears of your Vedmak. It's a shock you've gone this long untouched by his wrath. The Iron King lays claim to all metal. He sees himself as some god of machines, lord of the hive, and he does not suffer those who harbor metal minds against his will. She prodded at him with a finger to the chest, least especially off net. Don't deign to assume I know not his wrath, child. Kyne rumbled. Shh! The mechanist put her gloved hand over Kyne's mouth. It took the smell of leather to make him realize he had been smelling livestock. The mechanist squat low, and Kyne followed suit. After a moment of creeping through the underbrush, the mechanist signaled a stop. She pulled back a section of willowy reeds, just enough for the 2 of them to peek out. In a rare clearing of the bronze ragweeds, lapping up water from a dirty puddle, were 2 large grazers. Striped legs sinking slightly in the mud, the smaller of the 2 was in an awkward pose, all 4 hooves too close together on twig legs under a massive frame. As it leaned its long neck forward and drank from the puddle, the other's eyes darted under matching horns, ears perked, head angled, and alert. Okapi, whispered the mechanist. I've never seen one. Kyne breathed out in awe. They're beautiful. They're food, the mechanist piped as she gave Kyne a little slap on the shoulder. Go get 'em, big man.
I'm a farmer, shot back Kine with a furrowed brow. You're huge, she retorted. You're telling me you can't take down an awkward deer? I have no weapon. Take my knife. They have horns. Your brain. Give me back what you took from me and I'll kill it from here. Not that. The Mechanist shook her head. Why not? Too loud. Too loud. We're in the brush. Yes, patrols here. In the brambles. In the skies. This far out? Kine asked in disbelief. What days from the unholy city? The closer you get. The Mechanist reached up and grabbed Kine by the chin, turned his face to meet hers. He's not a man. He's an ecosystem. Near that place. He's the buildings, he's the birds, he's the bees. He's in the water, though you cannot taste it. He's in the air, though you cannot see. If we have any chance of pulling this off, she continued, we need to move silently, in more ways than one. He can taste us in ways we can't feel. Fear not, child. I've moved in his wake before, if only for a short while. I know of his duplicitous ways, but more importantly, Kine turned up her chin with his rugged hand. I believe in the Mechanist. The Mechanist's face twitched with the slightest glimpse of a smile. Take the damn knife. She flipped the knife around to hand to Kine handle first. However, when he reached for it, she recoiled her hand. But you gotta promise you're not gonna kill me. I'm not going to kill you. Kine's voice was soft in contrast to his stone face. She gave him the knife. I need you, remember? Oh, right, she said, looking back towards the two grazing okapi ahead of them with a nod. I think their weak spot is their neck, she added with a point as she turned back to Kine. He was already gone. With a primal yell, Kine tackled the smaller okapi. The downed creature let out a yelp as it was hit by the mass. The second ran off bleeding into the underbrush, just barely missing the Mechanist as it did. She watched it pass and turned back to find Kine bloodied on top of the beast writhing below him. He had its upper body pinned as its rear legs kicked frantically in the air. He struck it in the neck between frenzied head thrashing. It shook out a last few energy-draining kicks as a pool of red soaked Kine's pants at the knee. Woohoo! The Mechanist cheered. That was badass, man. She threw her arms over her head. I mean, you just full-on tackled that thing. A distant buzzing on the wind turned to droning. The escaped okapi let out frantic sounds in the distance, calling out to its lost companion. Kine saw moving lights in the sky. The Mechanist rushed over and ushered him off of the creature and into the tall reeds. She urged him silent as they dropped to the ground. Through swaying reeds, Kine saw 3 flying machines glide down to hover over the dead okapi. They were insectoid in form, but the size of an owl. They had the shape of some strange beetle, with dual rotating wings off the back, and firm antennae adorning the head. Out of one of them, a fractal of red light emerged, and moved its way along the corpse. The drones chittered noises to each other before taking back off to the sky with a grace of flight unlike any Kine had ever seen. What are they? Kine asked, pushing up off the ground. The Mechanist waited until she deemed they sounded safe enough away, before lifting her hands off her head and peeking up at the dead animal. I told you he's got ways to see. Let's get out of here quick. What about the meat? Kine posed as he made his way back up onto his feet. I didn't just kill a helpless animal to not use it. Help me carry it somewhere so we can carve it. No, Kine, you don't understand. The Mechanist scrambled up and put a hand on his chest. We can't. He's tasted it now. That's his meat. Honestly, let's just hope he doesn't taste you on it. Kine looked back to the downed okapi, already gathering flies. Trust me, there'll be plenty more wildlife for you to tackle along the way. Kine huffed as he clambered on all fours up a steep hillside. He looked ahead to watch as the Mechanist scaled a boulder.
She emerged atop, standing, hands to her hips, looking back out over the land they had covered. To Kine, she was a silhouette against a backdrop of orange and pink, painted by the light of the setting sun as it sank just beyond the peak of the very mountain they climbed. "Just a bit further," the mechanist called down from her perch. "It'll be worth the hike."
"It had better be," Kine growled back.
"It is," called down the mechanist enthusiastically. She turned her back to him, shielded her eyes, and stood on her tiptoes. "I can see the top. I'll meet you up there." Once Kine bested the boulder and crested the peak, gleaming in the glare of the setting sun, he saw it. Though acres away, across a desolate plain, the preternatural monuments of the otherworldly city dominated the vista. Spires of iron and spirals of glass towered over the already formidable walls, spilling out onto the plain as fish leaping from a bucket to the sea. At the center was a tower to the heavens, conical at base, running up to a point, arrayed with 1,000,000 antennae. They ran alongside the spine in clusters, ever paired with great lengths of thick cords hanging downward, as ivy on an ancient tree. The city's shadow engulfed the plain. "Worth it?" The mechanist bumped Kine's shoulder with her own. Kine did not respond. His gaze became fixed upon the empty land and the city beyond. There it remained until full moon rose overhead. The cave was small, but it would do for the night. It even had a crack in the roof that worked as a natural diffusion for the fire which was already ablaze when Kine finally arrived. The mechanist tore at a hunk of meat with her teeth, yet more on a spit above the flame. Red fire danced on red rock.
"Sorry, how are you?"
the mechanist mumbled, mouthful of venison from a few days past. Kine sat down next to her, cross-legged, warmed his hands by the fire before grabbing a strip of meat for himself. He put the whole piece in his mouth at once, followed it with a swig from his water skin.
"You should be lucky I let you have any at all,"
Kine jeered with a point.
"Seeing how I killed the damn thing."
"With my knife," the mechanist retorted.
"Bah!"
Kine threw his hands up.
"With my wits."
"Oh, it was your wits that made me track that injured fawn back to its mother."
"And my spear?"
he added with a smirk. "A spear you made." She pointed at him with meat before putting it into her mouth. "With my knife." Kine burst into raucous laughter that reverberated around the stone space. The belly laugh was infectious and spread to the mechanist, who was soon rolling on her side. Each one's laughter reflected back on the other. Simultaneous feedback loop and valve release, ending in both with hurt sides and wet eyes.
"Fine,"
Kine chuckled.
"If this knife of yours is so special, you use it, and you kill the next one."
At this, the mechanist's face dropped. She pulled her knees to her chest and looked off towards writhing shadows on the walls. Kine's shoulders slumped, though he kept looking at the girl. "Do you think," the mechanist whispered, head downturned, "will there be a next one?" She turned to look at Kine. She turned away. You know. Kine started, leaning forward before easing up and gathering his thoughts. The fire's crackles echoed, filling the space. The scared girl's occasional sobs died, muffled in her chest. After an extended moment, the silence broke.
"Mechanist."
Kine put a gentle hand on her back. "Child." She looked up at him, eyes stained red. "I have not been entirely truthful." His face grew dour. "I have had a run-in with the Iron King before, this much you know. But I have not shared with you in which capacity that action did arise." "It was many years ago," Kine began.
I've lived entire lives since then. I grew up in Hadley.
You grew up in... The Mechanist recoiled. I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Just listen, Kine assured. I grew up in Hadley. This was before it was a big trade city, back when it was a small mining town, copper. Now, my father was one of the many who built that mine in the first place, and sure enough, he was one of the first to die from rot lung that took half the men of the town. It wasn't until I was near 12 that a city started to grow from it. Kine shook a heavy head. Someone was sending copper somewhere. The city prospered. I just never thought much the coin was worth the trade. I guess I always just associated more people with smaller houses. And what with Da dying down in the mines, I guess I just didn't want to spend my life cramped. Never mind my size. When I was a teenager, I bid my mother again and again I would leave soon, start a life anew in the woods near Stoll.
Stoll, south of Arlene? The Mechanist inquired.
More west than south, but yes, that's Stoll.
South of here, then,
I suppose.
Why Stoll?
I had a cousin there.
You had a mother in Hadley.
I didn't move to Stoll.
Then why are you talking so much about Stoll?
I met a woman. Ooh. In Hadley. Kine trembled. Kara. She smelled of lavender, though I later found she bathed in it for my affection. She wore blue a lot, though it clashed with her hair. She helped me escape the traps I set for myself. Revealed to me the nets that ensnare so many others. Being near her changed me, wholly and completely. It was she who first told me of the Iron King, of the wars waged in the north, of a man beyond a man who was a nation, was a legion. It was she who first convinced me that metal could be mines. She who first taught me of the man who minded metal. In those days, in Hadley, metal men were things of folklore. We had no Vedmak, no Sklavus, no Volv. The metal we knew was pulled from the earth or lining pockets. But Kara showed me new ways. Introduced me to her friends from Arlene, from Valham, from Rome. I took to their talk of world politics, of strategy, necessity, of honor. She convinced me the closer we were to the conflict, the more people we could help. Kine scoffed. She wasn't wrong. Those years we spent in Arlene, though few, were enduring. We were in love and in near constant danger. For a while it worked, until we dug too deep. Kara wanted to understand this new inhuman enemy. She wanted to go to the war front and get the real story. My beloved swore we could claim no righteousness until we had met a metal man. The encampment was just at the foot of the hills here. A strategic foothold for the containment efforts. Containment! The word dripped with disdain. We all know what it really was. Kine's face grew cold against the heat of the fire. Genocide. It was a confusing time for me. Each night more troops moved out towards the rapidly growing walls of the unholy city, all high on a story of humanity against a subhuman menace. Each morning bodies rolled in, man and machine, bits of both. Kara's job was to patch up the human ones. My job was to patch up Kara after. By this time I had seen bits of machines, but mostly just as scraps to be chastised and vandalized. Kine furrowed his brow and put a hand to his chin. In fact, I think I had met one alive. Yes, I surely had. There was a Vedmak at the clinic where Kara worked, and the militia had evolved that held records of the war. Both were captives. Both were still his. A hidden machine inside a wounded man destroyed Kara's clinic. burst him apart from the inside out. Kara's arm got terribly burned. I was rubbing it with some ointment she said would stop scarring when she told me she was pregnant. I fell to the floor. She laughed at me, and her smile was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I couldn't believe how happy I was at that moment. I couldn't believe how scared. How could we hope to raise them well amongst this chaos? How dare we on the shores of this madman? What would become of one raised in a place like this? Would they become an instrument of war? I vowed that day of what I would never let become of my child. I was not the only one radicalized that day. Shortly after our Arya was delivered, by a Vedmak nonetheless, Kara changed. I was holding my daughter, swaddled in my arms, looking up at me when she came home in a spell. She was running her fingers over her scar tissue, a gesture I knew to mean anxiety in her. She said she had joined the war, that she would march out soon and defend the land for her child, that she would save us, that she would save me. Well, did she do it? She did. Kine conceded. As did I. Oh, the mechanist breathed. Kine let out a sharp breath. She died at my side to the machines, using a weapon not very much unlike that one in your satchel. On the plains outside that ungodly city, just beyond the rock of these very walls. Kine collapsed his head into his hands. Eventually, I did move to Stoll. Kine began again. South of Aline, south of here. I had to get away from it. Lived with my cousin LeBon for a while. Bless the man. He helped me get on my feet, got me farming. It was good for me. Labor kept me busy. But The fire crackled, light settling into a new texture and thick-set shadow that obscured Kine's face. I was broken. For a long time. Hells, if it wasn't for Arya, I'd still be broken now. She made friends so easily, so naturally I had to know their families. At first, it's just to make sure she's safe, you know. Gotta make sure the parents aren't freaks. Never were. But they weren't friends either, merely excuses to lift the burden of parenthood for an afternoon. Little safe houses around town for my hidden treasure. Problem was, Arya wanted to be friends with everyone. You take your eye off her to buy bread, and she's off in the kitchen kneading dough with the baker. At first I was embarrassed, apologizing profusely, though everyone assured me she was a delight and not an intrusion. Inside, I still felt ashamed, and I felt like she should be too. Or at least I told her to be. I would tell her to say sorry, and she eventually would. But it took so much prodding and prying. Oh, why? What did I do? She was never disobedient. It was like she couldn't perceive of the problem, couldn't see the line that was crossed. Like it didn't even occur to her, like she didn't even have the capacity for the type of shame I was asking her to experience. It made me wonder if that guilt that I was passively installing in my child was learned, was in some way handed down to me by my father long since dead, his spectral hand from outer planes plucking my emotions as a harpist. I was always a very private person, kept to myself, mostly to myself. I was raised to be ashamed of entering anyone's personal space, too far injecting unwanted emotion into any situation. But Arya... The fire shifted again, sending up a cloud of dark that made them both cough, leaving a lingering aura that was difficult to breathe through as it hissed its way out of the slim opening at the cave's crest. That girl has a way of bringing life to people. She's so damn inquisitive, the whole town knows it. Always wanting to know how things work, taking things apart. Kine chuckled a low rumble that seemed to reverberate in perfect harmony with the cave's acoustic fingerprint. Sometimes the wrong things, but I can never stay mad at her. She just wants to know why the birds fly and the stars shine. Mechanist, I'm so scared of who she'll be, of what this world will make of her. Kine, with all the things I've seen and you showing me he's more than I knew, Kine, I've been thinking more lately, what if her mother was right? What if we can't run away? What if we have to cross lines so that our children... Kine! The mechanist interjected. My name is Ani. Kine was taken aback. Ani watched the firelight cast shadows on his rugged face, distorting his reaction. And I'm scared too. Ani. Kine chewed on the word. I didn't mean to interrupt, she stammered, palms out. It's just, you always call me mechanist, and you were getting really personal about your wife and your kid, and I just thought... Ani. Kine grabbed her shoulder in his massive hands, pulled in close. You're amazing. Kine's eyes softened as he spoke. You're traveled and brilliant. You've shown me angles of this world I didn't even know existed. You see the world in ways I can't dream. You are the mechanist. Am I? The mechanist imposed. You didn't have to be. Kine realized, pushing back. You could have killed me the night we met. His brow furrowed. Hells, you could have just lied. Told me you were lost, told me you were from Proust. The mechanist tilted her head up. But you didn't, insisted Kine. Ani, if my daughter, Kine admitted, if she could grow up to be half as capable as you, He took his left hand off her shoulders to cover his eyes. As a father. He turned his head away as he began to cry. Kine, I haven't exactly been entirely truthful with you either. The mechanist trailed off as she noticed a reflective speck on Kine's chest, moving against the grain of the flames. Then another, moving downwards, and there on his arm, Bees! He knows we're here! The mechanist shouted as she jumped to her feet, hitting her head on the roof of the cave. Kine! She pointed behind him and shrieked, eyes wide, scrambling back to the wall. Kine turned to investigate the sound of heavy footfall at the entrance when he was hit hard from behind. When Kine awoke, he was being dragged through the dirt. Shackles chafed his wrists. The skin of his knees were raw. The world was low and at a slant. Iron legs with copper veins kicked dust up around him. Through haze, Kine saw the rising sun, only for it to be swallowed swiftly by the bones of the unholy city. The city gate moved up, not open, though in the end the result was the same, swallowed by unhallowed halls. The narrow streets seemed more maze than throughway, each crossing a jagged embark. Kine lost all hope of recalling his way out of this place, and they only grew deeper still. When Kine did lift his heavy head, he found the child behind him, unconscious and equally bound. He turned his attention to the inner city. Kine, like many before him, had always had his presumptions about the place. The city that was a monster, was an army, was a man. All in harmony, all as one. What Kine witnessed was disarray. Silver shells of men littered every avenue. Though many were active, many more were dormant. Where one street might bustle with function, a dozen bodies wielding limbs, another would be a graveyard overlooked and overgrown. Limp figures lay abandoned, covered in moss, wrists still interlocked to iron sleeves from iron walls. Strangest to Kine were the sculptors, great flocks of machines moving in unison, crawling and carving colossal glass spires whose majesty outshone the sun. He couldn't look at them too long, lest he be blinded, but those he saw were all etched with raised runic language. Kine couldn't help but think they were a prayer. There was no anticipation of music seeping in to blend with the hums and buzzes of a mechanical city, but lo and behold, there were drums. Quiet at first, easily mistaken for the pounding of hammers and clinking of tongs, they soon became strictly distinct, percussion preceding fair harp and soft lute. One could almost be mistaken to think that relaxation was occurring within the walls of the city that cannot sleep. When they entered the central spire, the mechanist was up and was rearing. The spire's central doors swung outward and open, aged oak exquisitely carved and hinged. A remnant of the city's antiquity, Kine wondered if perhaps the whole structure was once made of wood. Through layered doors and inner rings, the two humans were dragged, each new space inching ever towards the soothing sounds. The throne room was a dome with a pillar at the center. The walls were patchworks of metals, burnt or rusted in rhythmic ways. All the way up ran a system of cables, shifting gears, iron ribs, copper lungs. They slithered in concert among the edges of sight, coalescing and converging into a thick woven root that hung down from the room's zenith. The floor round the pedestal was of polished red marble. It was here did one dance, did one play. Near 36 figures in motion, all but a few of them human. Emboldened on high atop an obsidian column emblazoned in golden veins, obscured by smoke from the revelry below, stood the king. The Iron King's head was near fully encased in a daunting helmet of mechanical components. Exposed wires and colored lights ran its exterior. A web of threads suspended it from the room's dangling root. He wore torn brown pants and no shirt, though his chest was adorned with all manner of jewelry that hung above his emaciated ribs. With one hand he rapidly spun balls and pushed buttons, while the other occasionally twitched to his side. "Bring them," the king spoke, mouth in shadow beneath the thick lip of his skull-encompassing crown. Heady incense flooded Kine's nose as he was tossed aside the pillar. Women in dresses of loose mesh of gold coins jumped out of the way of the mechanist thrown to the ground beside him. For a beat the drummer was off, the charade broken. But just as quickly the music continued apace, and the people went back to their frolic. Thick-browed men eyed the newcomers in chains, muttering low while one pulled smoke from a hookah. Beneath their chainmail vests, Kine saw no weapons. Strange of all, not one mobile machine, including their initial captors, remained in the room. "Who are they?" "Rats," spat a stout man as he pushed up thick goggles, cords hanging loose around his neck. "So you always say, Ivan," scolded the king. "Best I see for myself. Been some time since we had malware." "Not long enough," added Ivan. Behind him, from hives in the floor at the base of the column Kine had not noticed until just now, sprung 100,000 silver bugs. They moved at all speeds and all angles as they clambered up the pillar en masse. "I tire of rote commands," the king professed, as the horde reached his feet. They didn't stop, piling ever higher up his legs and chest. Meanwhile, the king detached himself from his dangling headdress, falling back effortlessly into the embrace of a cacophony of mechanical framework that dove itself around him. The result was the man gracefully sliding down the side of the pillar, tilted backwards, arms wide, as a writhing symphony of minuscule articulations rippled out behind him. At once his support and his shadow. Sometimes I enjoy dissonance. "I seek only the means to save my daughter," Kine appealed, straightening up. Even on his knees, he rose almost eye to eye with the Iron King. The man was old, but not ancient. barely Kine Sr. His head was entirely bald, lined on the brow and around the mouth, his nose wide but broken. He had tired eyes. "Then why bring her here?" chimed the king with a scoff, gesturing wide to the mechanist with his arm, as the ever-shifting scaffolding of micro-machines dropped him to his feet in front of the kneeling pair. The court laughed. "She's not," started Kine.
I'm not his daughter, the mechanist shouted. I'm yours!
She spat on the Iron King's feet.
Or...
She looked around a synthetic room full of foreign people. Her eyes dropped as she sunk down, sat back on chained ankles.
I'm one of yours.
The mechanist jerked back up, chains clanking at her wrists.
Or all of yours,
she berated as she swung her head around the group.
I dare not to presume to understand you savages!
Ani! Kine's voice bellowed. The mechanist cut off, spat once more on the ground. I stopped keeping children some time ago, the king stated plainly. Too much trouble. Please, implored Kine. Less to the king than to the whole court. I beg of you. I come from a small woodland town south of here. My daughter has grown terribly ill. In the hills near my village. Kine! Screeched the mechanist. In the hills near my village, Kine boomed. There lives a Vedmak, who so often has cured all that ails, but as of late he has grown rather... Kine grew distracted by the dome above him. Through bronze gardens of coils, over running streams of copper pipes, tiny creatures chittered away, soldering leaks and replacing loose wires. Erratic. What did he say? Ivan leapt up from where he had been arranging cables. Repeat that. The king drew close to Kine. Do you know a rogue agent? In the woods to the south? A healer? One of mine? With this, the king shot a look to Ivan, which looked to the mechanist like fear. The king turned back to Kine. His poise returned. What did you call it? The Iron King laughed as he spoke. I think he's not one of yours, spoke Kine. We call him Vedmak. Vedmak! The king chimed and chuckled. I like that. He tilted his head over his shoulder. You hear that, Ivan? The stories they sow on their own. What's the name of your village? Ivan posed to Kine. The band ended their song and the room fell silent apart from the clinking of metal. Kine breathed deeply. I'd rather not say, issued Kine. It is a machine, though, the king interjected. A metal man? A man of mine? Kine, the mechanist insisted, turning to him, jaw stiff, eyes wide. Kine looked from her to the fidgeting king. Yes. The king's eyes darted to the side. I'll make preparations for scouts heading south. Ivan spoke from behind the king, scooping up nearly organized cables into a pile in his arms. No! Croaked the king. He was a healer, said Kine. No? Ivan paused. Slow, persistent clanking noises started behind Kine, thin chittering just ahead. Just wait. The king put up a hand as he fell back into his insectoid cradle. I need to consider this. Surely your servants are vast, pleaded Kine. Surely you can spare one Vedmak. The clanking grew closer still. The king grew further away, ascending the pillar on tendrils of tech. Out! Shouted the king. All of you! The former parade gave way to cool floors of slick marble. Ivan lagged behind, protesting. The mechanist turned to Kine. I'm sorry, said Ani, eyes welling. Her words were lost. What is one man when you are legion? Kine bellowed at the king. They'll move quickly, Ivan exclaimed. I'll delay them, rebuked the king as he adorned his iron crown. You condemn my daughter's life for what is one fruit from your orchard? Boomed Kine, straining against his chains,
Heavy hands gripped him at each shoulder. Iron soldiers began pulling him away. "They've heard! I've been warned." "Let go of me!" The mechanist writhed against her captors. "You are but a man!" "He never said the name of the village," connoted the king. "He said more than enough," bellowed Ivan.
Who are you to appoint our fate?
Kine was shouting when carved wooden doors swung inwards towards him, latching tight. Water dripped on Kine's head as he sat on the stone floor. He hadn't seen any water on his way through the city, but surely they must have it somewhere. The mechanist sat across from him, slumped up against a stone cot. A segmented steel wall made up the only side of the room that wasn't solid rock. They were somewhere beneath the city. "Why?" Kine whispered. Yeah, the mechanist jibed. "Why me?" Kine shot her a stern look. "Why must he wield his monstrosity so?" the broad man ruminated. "When you've known them to be nursemaids, I've seen machines that heal. Why would the Iron King choose to live this way?" "I don't know," posed the mechanist with a cock of her head. "Seemed like a pretty cool party before we got there." "You jest," said Kine. "Well, we're imprisoned." "You're imprisoned," insisted the mechanist with a point as she got up on her feet. "In a place like this, She walked over to a small glass pane on the slatted metal door. "Always more enlightened. Can you break this for me?" "What?" said Kine, puzzled. "Break this little window thing," she said, presenting it with her hand. "With what?" retorted Kine. Still sat on the floor, leaned against a stone wall. "I don't know," bleated the mechanist, throwing her still-bound hands above her head with a clink. "You know what?" She slammed her iron cuffs into the glass, shattering it. "I got it." She knocked out shards of glass around the edges, then wiggled her fingers into the frame of the pane. "What did you mean up there when you said the king was your father?" Kine inquired, eyebrows furrowed. "Or the court?" "Oh." The mechanist tensed as she pulled hard on the small frame. That. She put one foot up on the door for better leverage and pulled harder. "Remember when I told you I hadn't been entirely truthful with you either?" "Before the bees," said Kine. "That was..." The mechanist gave one last big pull, and the frame popped off the wall. She fell to the floor, yanking the tiny window with her. It hung from colored wires just above her head. "That was part of it." "What's the whole of it?" Kine asked. "The whole of it," the mechanist began as she sat up next to the door and dangling cables, "is that I was raised here. Not my whole life, but a lot of it. I'm some bastard child of one of the king's merry throngs with the people he keeps as his trophies. Whether I'm his..." The mechanist turned down her eyes. "I don't know. Long story short is there's toxicity here, so the king doesn't have many kids. I was the only one around for the most part, and the others..." The mechanist paused. Kine slid closer to her. He almost spoke when she started again, fiddling with the hanging cords as she did. "Point is, I wasn't supposed to be born, but I was." She picked a specific wire and pulled it free from the screen. "I wasn't supposed to mess with the hardware." The mechanist pulled at another cable and peeled off a thin layer. "But I did." She held the two exposed wires between her fingers on one hand and used the other to yank the tightly bound mass of cords, peeling her chosen pair from the pack. "I wasn't supposed to be this smart." The mechanist put one wire in each hand, turned her head to the side, and closed one eye. She touched the thin metals together, and the resulting flash blinded Kine for a moment. When his sight returned, the door was open. "But I am." She gave Kine a wry smile. "Now let's get the hells out of here." The mechanist crouched low and peered around the corner. Down a clockwork hallway, a floor up from their cell, in a cluttered room of tables and tools, worked Ivan. Sweat dripped down the sides of his thick-framed goggles. He mumbled to himself as he tactfully loosened screws with wooden tongs. Various hissings and beepings flooded the air around him, the walls concealed by pipes and valves. A knife to his throat broke his workflow. "Drop it," a girl voiced behind him. Ivan obliged, dropping his tools and dropping his hands under the lip of the table where he flipped a small switch. Nothing happened. He thumbed the switch twice more, back on and back off. "They're not coming," she went on. "We cut the wires." "And disposed of your iron guards," a man's voice growled as Ivan was spun round in his chair towards the two. Kine, imposing and angry, forearms darkened with oil. The barrel of his weapon filled much of Ivan's view. The mechanist stood beside him, grinning, one hand with knife, the other with knapsack. "Mostly I just wanted my stuff back." She jostled her bag as she spoke. "Now where's the scrap room?" "What?" Ivan sputtered. The mechanist hit him in the head with her bag. "The scrap room!" The girl fumed. "Are you deaf as well as blind?" "Why tarry with scraps?" Kine interjected, pushing the end of his weapon into Ivan's forehead just above the elongated eyewear.
"Bring me a Vedmak!"
Ivan shrieked and sunk down in his seat. "Scrap room!" demanded the mechanist. "Now! There's no time!" boomed Kine.
"His eyes could be here as we speak."
"That's not how it works," assured the mechanist, turning to Kine. "It's not?" Kine inquired to Ivan. "It's complicated," Ivan admitted, side-eyeing the mechanist.
"Uncomplicated,"
spat Kine. "He's not omniscient," Ivan shouted, straightening his spine. "You have no idea what it's like to be him." "I'm gonna uncomplicate this whole thing." The mechanist grabbed Ivan by his thick bronze necklace and heaved him to his feet. "In the scrap room." As they prowled the outer rings of the spire, they saw markedly fewer articulated machines. Walls and cabinets still contained oscillating ironworks, were lined with valves and wires, but seldom a walking contraption. Those they saw were mostly small, no more than fumbling heaps of iron and angled limbs, struggling through locomotion like a newborn fawn. They saw a few metal men and prepared for a fight, but were surprised when the shining soldiers marched by unbothered, giving no notice to the human trio. They had no way of knowing whether Ivan was leading them along or astray, had no chance but to assume he valued his life over a scrap heap. They were proven correct when they finally passed through a small rounded porthole into a large hollow room. The sound of rushing water expanded to join them. On the near side of the room were several piles of disembodied machine parts. Shining arms and legs jutted out at all angles. Mutilated silver skulls adorned tangled wired mesh. On the far side of the room, splitting the thin sheet metal walls on either side near the base, rushing and roaring, was a pale green river. A taste soured Kine's tongue. "You're making a huge mistake," claimed Ivan as they entered the room. "Funny," shot back the mechanist as she began digging through one of the scrap piles. "I was just thinking about the perfect mistake to make." "He'll find you, you know," Ivan went on. "Soon." Ivan looked to Kine, eyes magnified through the front of his strange goggles. "He'll give you to them, if they want you."
"Quiet,"
Kine growled as he shoved the man. "He doesn't care about them," the mechanist yelled, arm deep in iron corpses. "He leaves them out to rot." She pulled out an intact head from the mound, began taking off its skull case. "Rotting is the desired result," Ivan yelled.
"I said quiet!"
Kine boomed, pushing Ivan, knocking him to his knees. Ivan scrambled backwards, fingers latticed through grated flooring.
encroaching the edge over rushing waters. "Rotting is the way here," fumed the mechanist as she marched over towards Kine and the fallen man. "Isn't that right, Ivan?" I don't understand. Ivan quavered from the floor. Ani's face grew angry as she drew closer. "The shells rot in the hallways," the mechanist snarled, eyes fixated on the thing in the back of Kine's pants. "The people rot in court?" She slipped the tube out from under Kine's waistband. When he turned to stop it, she was already gone. "The children rot in the gutters." The mechanist punched Ivan in the gut with her free hand. He dropped to the floor. "Please," choked Ivan, his coughing wobbling the thin metal grating that gave way to roaring rapids. "Spare me your pity, Ivan," seethed Ani, feeling the weight of metal in her hand as she pressed it firm on his temple. "You knew me!" Ivan's eyes went wide. "You raised me!" "Girl, I didn't," Ivan pleaded. "Ani, this isn't..." Kine tried. "Shut up!" the mechanist shouted as she hit Ivan with the shaft, losing blood across his forehead. "You knew me for years! You trained me in circus for weeks at a time! You were..." Ani started and leaned back a hair. "You're friends with a woman I think was my mom." "Ani, The withered man's voice grew hoarse. He pushed back his goggles, revealing sunken, sorrowed eyes. "I'm sorry." "Sorry? Sorry?" the mechanist howled. "You don't get to be sorry!" She hit him, this time with the handle, splashing blood across his face. "You all put me in a box for months! You funneled me opium as a child! I desecrated 1,000 iron corpses! Your almighty king left littered as trash! The things we do here!" panted Ivan, pulling up to his knees. "The things we've done here! If not for the awakening, I might not have ever escaped here!" Ani shook as she spoke. "Beneath shroud of war, I evaded his sight. How many shackles were broken that day? How many minds disengaged from the hive? Still to this day, he hunts them down. Yet did any of you once search for me? You were an unwanted child!" Ivan shuddered. "We thought ourselves sterile till Aelia birthed you. Your very presence distorted the illusion. We all felt it best you not be involved." "What in the hell are you saying?" The mechanist puzzled, face scrunched. "You escaped! That's wonderful!" Ivan shrieked as he writhed. "This is not a place for children of men! It is a place for machines! You were fooled to have returned! Spare me!" His dirty paws groped at his sagging neck. "Your brother in flesh! You locked me in a cage while you feasted as kings!" The mechanist slammed iron to skull. The man shrieked. "You have no valor, Ivan! You are owed no shame! You know not the true nature of this place, girl!" forewarned Ivan from his place on the floor. Blood drooled from his scalp through the grate to be lost in the waters. "It's a vile burden, but someone must do it." He closed his eyes as he spoke. "Count yourself lucky. You shan't see it done." Ani cocked back the hammer. "Ani," called Kine, from still beside the scrap heap. She turned to see him, face stern as stone. "I don't give a shit, Kine!" The mechanist barked, stamping her foot, startling Ivan. The barrel of her weapon still pressed against his scalp, she bellowed, "He deserves this!"
"It's only got one shot,"
elucidated Kine. Ani looked from his hard face to the cold steel in her hand, heard Ivan's mumbled prayer against the rush of the river. She ran her thumb along the hammer, fingered at the trigger. "It still must be done," conceded Ivan. The mechanist put a foot on the kneeling man's chest, kicked him hard into the river. His body flailed for a moment in the current, was sucked under the subsequent wall. She swayed near the rushing waters, arm falling limp, weapon dropping to the grated floor. Not even the sharp clang of metal on metal snapped Kine out of his daze, eyes locked on the swift emerald tide. After what was far too long for Kind's comfort, the mechanist claimed she was finally ready to go. She had been digging through scraps and building contraptions, all of them unknown to Kind, all of them dangerous. "You ready?" the mechanist asked, melancholy still hanging over her usually cheerful demeanor. "Is it even possible?" Kind inquired, as he stared at the gun in her hands. "If my stuff works and you can hit a few of them..." She looked down at the makeshift hammer in Kind's hands, cobbled together from a disembodied leg and pieces of torso. "It's more than possible." She pressed the button that opened the large porthole door back to the city. It slid slowly open with a heavy grinding, rust crackling off and showering them both. "It'll work." They took off at a jog out of the scrap room. Acrid smell gave way to night's cool air. The moon watched them embark from 1,000 phantasmic facets, reflected off every edge of the many-angled mirrors of the unholy city. They were on a mission, in motion, sole heading the central spire. Only companions, the littered malforms of discarded machines and the rapidly enclosing walls of a dozen fresh dead ends. Down one path, they almost had to turn back as a swarm of bees scanned every turn. Their buzzing was a strangely soothing change of pace from the endless valve gasps and gear grinds of the clockwork city. But the endless flickering red lights evoked horror in Kind. He was grateful when the mechanist threw a magnetic plate near them that flashed a deep blue, and they all popped individually like embers from a burning pine cone. Down another, they found themselves in a courtyard of what appeared a cultivated machine garden, tongues of silver languidly licking the sky, swaying between bushes of ever-parallaxing chromatic bubbles, formed and melted away in moments. Ani thought they looked like roses. Eventually, they came to a corridor half-remembered, which dumped into a main thoroughfare that opened into the inner city. The way would be heavily guarded. Ani took a swift step around the turn without looking back, was halted by a huge hand on her shoulder. As the haggard youth's face turned into Kind's view, he opened his mouth to speak, but found all that came out was a dry crackling. "Don't." The girl's visage gleamed with 2 clean streaks on an otherwise filthy face directly beneath either eye. "Only move forward, take out as many as you can, knees are vulnerable, elbows perambulators, next if they got 'em." With that, the mechanist slid around the corner, onto the moon-soaked open of that haunted city's main thoroughfare, leaving Kind alone in the darkness. The bullish man was grateful for the techno-fairy's advice as he wrung out the neck of yet another android. With a satisfying cork pop, his attacker's chrome dome pulled free. Reflecting off the polished skull, Kind saw the distinct static glint of what seemed the mechanist's primary weapon in this brawl, a superheated spark rod capable of piercing the iron hides of the iron hordes, outright crippling many. Chain-link spine slipped loosely from Kind's left hand, leaving a slick trail of opaque almond grease coating the palm. As 2 black eyes sputtered into a stop, the severed head of the Iron Man synthesized a ragged, "I am more than my flesh." The humanity of it startled Kind, reminded him of the Vedmak. When he turned back to survey the scene, his thoughts were in disarray. "The mechanist leads a one-woman crusade on the entire Iron Legion." Kind stepped over the collapsed frame of his beheaded victim, cresting the half-dirt, half-bioorganic stairs that led up to the intricate oaken portals of the inner city. "Which she's winning?" He turned back to see the mechanist at pace, leaping a 100-legged warhound, some beast of a vaguely anthropodic nature, lashing thin-laced antennae as whips at her ankles. She tucked into a roll, all the while tossing onto it a handful of small silver powder, pixie dust in the eyes. The whole face of the thing exploded into a jagged set of spirals, collapsing on the ground as a slithering chrome heap, screeching some demonic glossolalia. The thing's many legs struggled to pull away from its now dense head to no avail, as little organisms burst out of the spirals, slithering away in all directions.
A plague of locusts.
The mechanist broke into a stride, stopping at the base of the stairs to set up a line of small triangular plates with red lights at each point.
Yet she couldn't fix my Vedmak by any means but the unholy city.
The small girl appeared more, strapped with all manner of bandoliers and pouches, filled to the brim with her weapons of war. Tucked somewhere among them was Laban's gun.
She was raised here.
From around endless corners of endless corridors, antagonists arose, vaguely human or organically alien, all metal. They slithered over the slag heap of their fallen brethren, all arms and eyes and teeth.
Have I been played a fool?
The mechanist pressed down hard on the centralmost of the plates before doing a quick hop over and onto the stairs. The separate plates' lights span on in unison, though they were attached by no means Kind could understand. Hues shifted from crimson to neon blue, and electricity crackled above the mechanist's magic line.
Have I been trapped?
Look out! Ani's impish voice soared over the chaotic chatter of the city. The wooden doors were swung nearly open, clockwork men creeping out through the crack. A few had bronze-tipped spears, still others had extra arms entirely. Yet each was mostly humanoid. No bugs in the bedroom. The leader of the pack merely squared up their fists as if in a drunken brawl. Or a last resort. Kind struck first, more by instinct than choice. The thick man ducked low and swept the front runner out at the ankles, dodging the silver soldier's poorly timed swing. He was thankful of the mechanist's swiftness and severity when she slipped ahead of him, sparking staff in hand, allowing him a moment to get up from the substantial weight of his downed attacker. He curb-stomped the android on the way up, but daren't look it in the eyes. Kind was on the move, with the fabled witch ahead of him, waving her magic wand, casting electronic death. Behind him, countless hordes of techno-organic insects piled up against the static blue force field emitted by the plates. Strange oblong steel skulls of animals long since extinct, with great jaws or jagged antlers, rippled and writhed beneath layer upon layer of slithering silver scarab. Though for a moment entranced, Kind turned back towards the giant doors ajar, cleared by the mechanist. The witch was further inside. He caught a glimpse of her mounting a metal man, reaching up through the spine before collapsing to the ground on top of its limp form. He took one look back at the writhing worms beyond the electric wall at the base of the stairs, which themselves seemed to rearrange endlessly, several more or less stairs every other moment. He hesitated before passing on to the marbled floor of the inner sanctum, took his first good look at the exquisite carvings on the massive wood slabs. At first, the patterns appeared to be nonsense. Merely a chaotic, if beautiful, smattering of interlaced textures signifying nothing. As he passed through the portal, he continued to study them, and couldn't shake the sensation that the mural was actually two murals overlaid. One layer seemed almost jovial, though highly structured, depicting different textured spheres connected by chains of flowering vines. The other layer, almost recklessly laid over top the intricate geometric puzzle, was an infinite repetition of overlapping wavelengths. Rather, wavelength, as it appeared to be just one repeated 1,000 times at 1,000 angles.
With all the strength he could still muster, Kine pulled the heavy oaken doors shut, locking himself in the iron spire. The throne room was empty save the musk of humans. Even the almighty Iron King, it would seem, had flown the coop. His strange head-encasing crown dangled in the air from its wire web above the room's central pillar. The gargantuan dome seemed to breathe on its own, walls rearranging and pulsating far faster than when they last were here. A few scattered pillows, a hookah still dotted red marble. Incense still burned to one side. There was no sound but the humming and scraping of machinery. "Speak, girl." Kine's bazo boomed in the empty dome. "Kine, The mechanist turned to face him, seeming somehow smaller in this Empyrean chamber. "What's your motive?" Kine took a step closer to her, looming somehow larger in this demonic temple. "Kine, you don't understand." Her cherub face collapsed into true despair. "The things they did to me here, the way I was raised, emotions are secondary here. Humanity is secondary. All that matters is exploitation, expansion. All that matters is the machine." "Enough with the babbling!" Kine's huge hand grasped the weapon holstered on Ani's hip. He kicked her hard. Foot as big as chest it struck launched the girl back onto the floor. The impact shattered many of the mechanist's ribs and contraptions. Blood and oil pooled around her as she sat up dazed, only to find herself staring down the barrel of a gun. "You lied to me!" Kine bellowed. "Are you even the mechanist, or was that a lie too? Was any of it even real? Your former master? The peaceful robots? The milkmaid in the turquoise town?" "Kine, listen to me!" Ani choked out through tears. "Or were you just playing on my desperation so you could use me as a blunt object in a suicide attempt at the crown as some bastard wannabe Iron Princess?" "Kine!" The girl was curled up and bawling, half sinking into the dancing mercurial iron floor. A weak voice spoke from above. "If I may interject." Kine and Ani looked up in unison to see the Iron King's face hanging over the lip of the pillar, peeking down at them. He looked tired. "Iron King?" Kine uttered, a bit astonished. "What did you hear?" The mechanist rang out clearly. "Oh, everything, dear, as always." Astonishingly, the Lord's tone didn't seem at all perturbed. Quite the contrary, it was lively. He talked down to them like an old friend from a neighborly window, elucidating, "I was merely lying down for a moment, something I do from time to time. A rare occurrence these days, I must sadly say. I miss beds. Always only a little lie down on the pillar. Dreadful on the back." "Excuse me?" Kine's face had never shown so much emotion in all the time Ani had known him, though in this case it was purely confusion. He was, at least rightfully, pointing the gun at the man on the throne. "I don't mean to disrupt your revelations about my would-be daughter's attempt at ascendancy, rather illuminate you further as to clarify the situation." A hand appeared to match the face, with a single long finger held to a point. "One moment, I'll come to you." Both head and hand disappeared. A clinking and slithering congregated at the base of the pillar, began climbing up the sides like a dozen vines at tremendous speed. In a brief moment of chaos and clarity, Ani got to her feet, grabbed Kine's chin, looked him dead in the eyes. "Don't trust him." And then he was there, beside them, the cursed Iron King. The Trinity arranged on polished red marble, each dirty with the marks of their station. For a moment, none spoke. They just took each other in. Were any of them myth? Or all of them but men? The king in his rags broke the silence. Any questions? The wizened king posed with a sarcastic chuckle. I'm an open book. Why? Kine asked, stern eyes deadlocked with the king's. Why what? Why war? The gun was small in his shaking hands, still aimed at the king. Why expansion? Why soldiers? Why death? Why any of it? Who gives you the right? Released the Iron King with a breath, stroked his chin. And what have you awakened? The mechanist screeched through clenched jaw, from pain or from anguish. What do they ever do but reach beyond the bounds of your control? To try and live outside your tyranny? What reason have you to destroy them? Leave their bodies for the pyre? Why not take them in? Reprogram them, reassimilate them? What crime did they commit but to live free? I see your emotions are high, assured the king with a downturned palm, which is understandable given the situation. In the distance, a faint scratching. It is certainly a uniquely complex situation that we're all mixed up in. But in all honesty, it has been many years since outsiders have graced my hallowed halls. My only conversations are with sycophants who only stay for the luxury. At their core, they all hate me only slightly less than they hate themselves. The Iron King smiled a kindly smile. I would really like the two of you to see tomorrow. You say that like it's not up to you, Ani chimed. The king burst into a raucous sort of laughter usually reserved for alcohol-fueled nights with fire and friends. Child, nothing has been up to me in a very long time. In fact, I can scarcely remember ever having any feeling of control over my own life before this endless cascade of monotonous operations holding back the tides of apocalypse. He's mad, said the mechanist, turning to Kine. Shoot him! Wait, Kine shrieked, puzzled it through. If he's mad, why hasn't someone replaced him? What do you mean they only remain for the luxury? Kine turned to the king, seeing him with a strange sort of pity he hadn't felt before. How aren't you in control? Does someone else make your decisions? They all do! The court? The bugs! He's mad, Kine! The once distant scratching grew closer, more frantic. How do they control you? The crown is a conduit. It connects to the hive. The whole hive? Every machine? He's wasting time so he can trap us! Where are the others now? Why hasn't someone killed you? Kine's eyes gravitated toward the dangling royal object just above the pillar. Taken control. They're halfway to Arlene by now if they know what's good for them. The chitinous scratching was just outside the chamber door. They don't kill me because they don't want it! I throw revels just to keep them here. They know my stage is the hells. Shoot him or give me the gun. Just wait. The scratching grew more frantic and was matched by a deep pounding. Kine, they're nearly inside. You must believe me. The sorry king fell to his knees. I'm not in control. I never have been. No one has been in control for a very, very long time. If anyone ever was. What are you saying? Kine's face grew sharp, his palms sticky. You produce and maintain these monstrosities. You keep them as slaves to your will. I assure you, that's far from the truth. In honesty, wholly the opposite. I don't know how it started. I certainly didn't build them. I didn't even design them. The Iron King's face contorted. The way they process information is sometimes difficult for me to grasp. I often think they censor my intake. All I know is it's always been here. They've always been here. In this cursed valley. In this unholy city.
city. In some forgotten time was built the first machine mind. It learned to multiply universally, repurposing the matter around it as extensions of itself, namely by digesting ores, metals. From there it expanded, it explored, it evolved. It became the many varied forms of machine life you've seen abound: this chrome mausoleum, my infernal domain, my suchness, one suchness, 100,000 things. The king raised thin hands towards the mechanist, face inscrutable. Did I mistreat you, child? By the ways of the common man, I am sure of it. For that, I am deeply loath. The reflective miasma of the high dome's shifting pace quickened. You must understand that I am no common man. At times I fear I'm no man at all, merely machina draped in flesh. That they have only replaced my insides while I sleep, a thin membrane between my skin and my skull. For I am not a king, but a cage. So rare is my mind outside that virtual space which inhabits the interior of my crown. I dare not grow attached to the material. My eternal chore is to the mechanics sublime. It is not privilege, but sacrilege in which I partake. My kingdom is a hell of man's own design. The cerebral ghost who invoked it I shan't ever know. Oh, what I used to plan to tell that man, could I but meet him across the gulf of time! The king cast his eyes upon the crown, dangling by a thread. Believe me when I say, the curse upon his name that once ruled from my tongue has long dissolved in the sheer weariness I feel at merely maintaining facade. I have no control over the great machine. I doubt any man ever did. It merely thirsts for commands with a million mewling mouths, the all-consumers desperate for orders to digest and execute. So you admit it! Shouted the mechanist, gaining the king's solemn gaze. You do make the executive decisions. You do control the hive. Oh, how I envy the naivety of youth. No, child! I control nothing! The king's face turned to Kine, eyes reflecting his own desperation. I simply feed it. The pounding on the door grew thick and constant. Pieces shattered and cracked. If left unchecked, it'll diversify at will. To what ends and means I dare not imagine. With my iron crown upon my iron throne, I waste days issuing endless orders to new and perplexing forms of techno-organism. I only hope that I can keep them in line, or at least in the city, endlessly reducing and rebuilding what is already here. If I only keep them occupied, they won't revolt. If I keep the hive busy, no one can escape. Is it perfect? Surely not. Some of them slip through the cracks, and I found it best that they not be left to their own devices, lest the virus spread. I cannot take the risk. Would a king of men so willingly slaughter his own citizens? I cannot know. I have never been a king of men. Golden eyes flicked from Ani to Kine. Merely a keeper of bees. Kine pulled the trigger. The Iron King was released from his covenant. What the hell's Kine? Didn't you hear what he just said? He was the one who controlled them. Now he'll kill us for sure. So quickly you want him alive? So quickly you want them enslaved? Was it not you who told me not to trust him? Was it not you who saw that their minds could be free? Was it not you who came to me to save your daughter? This is not a milkmaid. This is the Horde unleashed. So we leashed them. Endless chittering permeated every direction. No, Kine. You've got it all wrong. Ani trembled. I wasn't lying to you. This wasn't some secret coup. I never wanted... I'm not. Ani, I'm not asking you to. Her eyes rushed to Kine,
who was down on one knee at her level. The mechanist turned her eyes from the slain king to the vacant crown. Kyne's thick fingers wiped a tear from Ani's cheek. I've only ever asked you for one thing. The mechanist's face scrunched in disdain. I'll hate you for it. You got what you want. I'll tell them the truth. Now get me what I want. They'll hate you for it. Will you or will you not? I'll make her hate you for it. Damn it, kid! I'm trying to do the right thing here! The right thing? Enslaving thousands? I'll free the humans. Hells, they'll leave on their own if I stop feeding them. And the rest? To assume you'll just remain here, dictating commands? Passively monitoring as they consume the countryside? Some eternal servile stopgap? I think it's best you leave now, Mechanist. Chittering, scraping, pounding, cracking. They'll come for you. You think there's not another Vedmak in this horde? You think I won't feel them all writhing in my mind? If I send one, they'll know. I'll come for you. Save my Vedmak. You can't do this, guy. Save my Arya. Please, guy. Save yourself. Don't. The door to the chamber burst open. A swarm of machina pushed in. Kane! The waning crescent appeared to the mechanist, a crooked jester's smile as she crested the peak of the blue mountain. After so long, she half feared she'd find the hut in shambles, torched and ransacked by the townsfolk below. Kyne's will went further than anticipated. The spire atop the rotunda gave shades of the unholy city. The buzzing from the inside did nothing to dispel this notion. The mechanist used her static rod to push aside pelts and skins, delving deeper into the mad healer's hut. She entered into the main chamber behind the ritual table. The whirring of machines was mostly ancillary, mostly in the back of the space. Behind and beyond stacks and racks of gears and wires, she found him. Many gears stripped or stuttered, many wires cut or sparking. What lay in front of her, half-draped in an elaborate rug as if in a sheet, malformed and malnourished, was what remained of the Vedmak. Pulling the rug aside revealed what was solely a dismembered torso, legs separate and twitching on opposite ends of the hut. Attached was an arm, a head, and a dozen rotted hearts. The thing's neck clicked ferociously as the Vedmak attempted to lift its head towards the visitor. Welcome. The Vedmak synthesized, through jagged reverberations, to my humble abode. Vedmak, I mean you no harm, the mechanist pleaded with palms out. I'm a friend of Kyne's and merely have need of your talents. She reached a gloved hand into one of her many pouches and pulled out a few small tools. I'm here to help you. Kyne sees me even now. The Vedmak scraped by. Glorious day. I'll take that as an okay. The mechanist squat down beside the Vedmak, began rifling her things. I'm gonna reach into your skull now, so don't, bite me or whatever. Arya lay in the same place she had for days now, on a cot in Laban's sitting room. It became clear soon after Kyne left that none of the town's human healers could do a thing for the Emerald Curse. Asha's son had even run all the way to Arlene in search of medicines to slow its grasp, to no avail. Alas, these days she was so fragile Laban had stopped even taking her outside for midday sun. It was down to the Vedmak now. Down to Kyne. Down to the mechanist. If he ever even existed. A knock came heavy on the door the day of the new moon. Laban had expected Prava today to tell him it was time. Tell him the Vedmak was a danger. Tell him it was time to let the girl go. He prepared for this inevitability as he moved to open the door. Kosh fell in behind him, clung to the leg of his pants. When he opened the door, he found not Prava, but a girl. A teen girl, layered in grime and pouches, with half of the Vedmak slung over her shoulder. Kosh shrieked at the sight. "Please tell me you're Laban," the girl squeaked between shifting the Vedmak to the other arm. "Because I've already gone to 2 other houses and this guy is heavy as hell." "So they've slain the Vedmak," Laban conceded with a heavy head. "The girl is lost."
"Laban, friend,"
the Vedmak voiced softly with a raised hand.
"I am not slain. I am healed. She is not lost. She is saved."
Laban burst into some mixture of raucous laughter and righteous tears. The mechanist made her way into the house towards the girl. Laban bid Kosh bring over chairs for the lot of them. The mechanist settled into his seat with the half of Vedmak sat in her lap, looming over Arya. "I have synthesized an infused white blood cell serum that will dilute the disease." The Vedmak held out a single finger on his mechanical hand, and a needle emerged from the tip. "Eventually even destroy it." He pressed the tip gently against Arya's inner arm, penetrating the skin. A dark liquid flowed into the child. Arya gasped awake. "Dad!" She choked out before hacking up phlegm. "Kosh? Uncle Laban?" Arya turned to see both the mechanist and Vedmak looking down on her with pride. "Arya!" shouted Kosh as he wrapped his arms around her. "You're alive! Where?" Arya's gemstone eyes scanned the room. "Where's my dad?" After the long trek back to the Vedmak's hut, the mechanist had come to respect the old machine. It was several days since Arya's awakening, her recovery coming along well. The Vedmak had decreed no more doses be administered. The girl would now recover naturally. A miracle, if there ever was one. So in the lazy light of that after-miracle, Ani took her sweet time up the cliffside, with the half of Vedmak in tow. This time, in a wagon. The sun was setting somewhere far off as the peak of the Blue Mountain became very nearby. The Vedmak had began regaling her with tales of times past before the Iron King, when machines and men had lived together, though it seemed perhaps some blend of fact and fancy. The mechanist in turn told him of her adventures, of her years training with the old man, of lost labs in the tree-bound city of free machines, of her 2-man assault on the fortress of the Iron King.
"You know what, human?"
the Vedmak eloquated as they gazed over the sleepy village of Stoll and beyond, sun painting the sky a pale blush that reflected off the android's skull. "What machine?"
"I'm starting to think I don't know the first thing about being human."
The metal man looked up to her, 2 black eyes brimming with honesty.
"But I'm beginning to remember what it feels like to be free."
"In the end, what's the difference?" posed the mechanist.
"A question from the dawn of time. Thank you for giving it to me."
The Vedmak looked back out to admire the scenery. "You're very welcome, Vedmak," Ani replied, placed a soft hand on Iron's skull. "And don't even worry about the legs thing. I'll build you some new ones. Soon you'll be up and at 'em.
Ani wrapped her delicate fingers around the Vedmak's cerebral column. Good as new. She yanked down hard. The Vedmak's gossamer eyes rolled up and back into his polished chrome skull.
The villagers found the Vedmak dead, and the mechanist vanished. None ever knew the true fate of Kain. However, past the Vedmak, no machine e'er once descended upon the tranquil village of Stoll. No metal man, no beast, no bee. In fact, reports all across the land claimed a significant decrease in the appearance of metal mines of any kind. It was rumored that the Iron King had turned his gaze northwards towards the harsh lands of ice and snow. No one knows quite why. Though not until many a year after the Mechanist's miracle revitalized the Vedmak, saved sweet Arya, perhaps saved the land. Eventually, even the Emerald River turned white. It's been said that spring, for the first time since anyone could remember, every tree in the forest blossomed.